Yes, hello everyone. I welcome you to yet another topic under macroeconomics. We are going to look at comparative advantage, which is yet another important concept in macroeconomics. Comparative advantage, sorry, forgive my voice, I have some serious flu, is attributed to the argument in favor of free trade and specialization among countries. So a country has an absolute advantage in producing a good over another country if it uses fewer resources to produce that particular commodity, and this could also be as a result of a natural endowment or natural resources endowed by a specific country. We all appreciate that different countries are endowed differently. What we have might be different from countries like Saudi Arabia. What countries like Saudi Arabia have. So, for example, for Saudi Arabia to extract oil, being that it is naturally endowed by this oil, all it needs is to drill a hole and then they'll have the fuel. And yet for other countries it might require a lot of technologies to extract the oil, that's if it is even there. So therefore the theory of comparative advantage is crucial. However, we relate it to an idea of opportunity cost. I'm sure from your microeconomics class you looked at opportunity cost, which is the opportunity foregone when choice is made. So, a comparative advantage, a country should have the least opportunity cost for it to maximize a production of a particular commodity. So this principle of comparative advantage is key in international trade, and it forms a basis as to why free trade is beneficial to countries, because if we all concentrated in production of commodities where first we use fewer resources and then we import others that would be expensive for us to produce. So if we all concentrated, so it would be a win-win situation for all countries, and that is only possible if excuse me, there is free trade. In other words, if trade among boundaries of different countries is free of charge. Otherwise, we can't only concentrate in producing what we are able to, and yet we can't import what we can't produce, so there would be no instance of comparative advantage. So this specific concept is always a win-win situation for countries in case there is free trade or international trade. So we're going to look at an example. We're going to consider two countries, and we are going to hypothesize that these countries involve in production of two commodities, which is oil and corn. So Saudi Arabia is well endowed with oil, but we also know that United States is the source of corn. It is the biggest exporter of corn to most of the countries. So from this particular table, we see that for Saudi Arabia to get 1 barrel of oil, it only requires 1 hour. And yet for America or the United States to get this same barrel of oil, it will need 2 hours. So meaning if we are to consider oil, Saudi Arabia has a higher comparative advantage than the United States. Now, if we look at corn, for Saudi Arabia to get 1 bushel of corn, it will require 4 hours. Yet United States, to get the same amount, it will only use 1 hour. So we see that in terms of time, a time resource, Saudi Arabia will incur a lot to get the same as United States would get with only use of within 1 hour. So comparative advantage is maximized if a country uses the minimum resources to maximize productivity or profits. So Saudi Arabia has an absolute advantage in production of oil because it only takes an hour to produce a barrel of oil compared to 2 hours that are required by the United States. And for corn, it is the opposite. So why comparative advantage? What are some of the benefits? We've seen that a low opportunity cost and higher profit margins, because if you're using resources that are naturally available, you're putting in little. So once your inputs are little, that means you're going to maximize profits. But then there is also increased efficiency. Efficiency is that rate of output compared to inputs. That you maximize efficiency if you're able to get much with minimal inputs. So those are some of the benefits of comparative advantage. But then whatever has a benefit also has some disadvantages. So as we would like to only concentrate on production of those commodities that where the resources required are naturally endowed by a country, but then there could be some limitations. For example, some governments may restrict trade. Recently we had a scenario where Rwanda closed off the border, and yet we get most of our beans from Rwanda, but then we also export our eggs, many products to Rwanda. So if a certain country decides to close off its borders, then the other country suffers. But then also there is a challenge of the high transport costs. In most cases, for example, if you're to get corn from America to Uganda, it might be cheap, the actual price of buying, but then the transport cost may outweigh the comparative advantage. The other is the increased specialization may also make scaling out different. If you're only concentrating on a specific product or components of a specific product, then expanding or scaling out to maximize to benefit economies of scale might be difficult. So I want us to get an insight on what absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and then specialization. So these three terms look a bit similar, but they are different. So an absolute advantage describes a scenario in which one entity or a country can manufacture a product at a higher quality and faster rates for greater profit than other competing countries or businesses. Yet on the other hand, a comparative advantage takes into consideration the opportunity cost involved when choosing to manufacture a particular commodity. So for comparative advantage, we are looking at what we are comfortable producing with a good quality, and then a faster rate or with a minimal inputs. But for comparative advantage, we look at the opportunity cost. So we involve in those commodities where the alternative is more expensive. Yeah, and yet specialization specifically looks at division of labor. So here the concentration of labor is on a specific production or yeah, thank you so much. This is all. We shall meet again for questions and answers. Stay well.